Hi, my name is Amanda, and I am the leader, sole proprietor of Nardone Holistic Fitness. I am creating this broadcast today because in conversations with a lot of my personal training, Reiki or yoga clients, we talk about dietary changes, and inevitably the question comes up, well, what do you do? As a practitioner who's leading others, I practice what I preach, and I have my own diet pretty honed in. This talk is not about saying that my approach is going to work for you. Most likely my specific approach won't, but it is to give you an idea of the dietary journey I have gone on, so that possibly it could inform your choices for what your best protocol is. So I started getting serious about making dietary changes when I was 16. I read The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. I think all of his writing is fantastic. But when I read The Omnivore's Dilemma, my heart went out to all of the animals, and I started seeing things through the eyes of a vegetarian. I was vegetarian for 5 years, and I had a really heavy plant-centered focused diet. I was unfortunately very anemic. So then I had to revamp things. Also, I was having all these problems with my skin. That's the tea. It's just going by. Don't worry about it. I was having all these problems with my skin. I had eczema, or what I thought was eczema. So I went to a holistic dermatologist, and she said, you need to look at what you're eating. You need to eat more vegetables. You need to eat more protein. You need to change it. Like these foods noodles do nothing for you. Noodles don't have nutritional value. Don't eat them. Eat vegetables and protein. That's really it. And then do deep breathing. And at the time, I didn't really fully digest that. So I'll talk to you more about how my process evolved. So I started making those changes. I noticed I'm severely allergic to gluten and dairy. And a few years ago, eggs came up too. So I got an allergy test done for those things. Now the allergist is a contact allergist, not a food allergist, or at least a traditional food allergist. They said that they don't think that those things could possibly manifest in eczema. And I said, could you please just run the test? They ran the test. Of course, it was those things. There were a couple other contact sensitivities, but they were surprised by the results. So I would say that have a conversation with your doctor. If you think something's hinky, tell them why. And maybe you'll both be surprised by something. So I did an elimination diet, and the eczema that had been plaguing me for 20 years disappeared entirely. I have no symptoms. I have no rashes. My acne went away. I started gaining muscle much faster. My body started working better, and people wouldn't stop saying that I looked pale. I am pale. I'm very white, but I don't look anemic. You can see there's a pinkish yellow tinge to my flesh. I don't look sallow anymore. So that change implemented itself for a while. Things were very good. And then as I got older, I wasn't really addressing the eat more vegetables component of it. I was eating a lot of food that doesn't really have nutritional value, but was still on my allergy protocol. So rice doesn't really do anything for me, body composition wise, or in terms of athletics. And I finally had to address that later on. I made the switch to a whole foods, mostly paleo approach. And so what the paleo approach means is vegetables and fruits, lean protein. That's really it. Vegetables and fruits, lean protein as much as possible. I mean, you can still throw in some things that are not on the protocol, but the gist of the diet is lean proteins and vegetables. That means if you're going to have pasta, it needs to be zoodles, and that's not the hardest change ever. You just buy different noodles. They might be a little bit more expensive, but or you could just get a zoodle maker and then buy the vegetables themselves and make your own zoodles. Um, but yeah, that was the change that was necessary. And so I have a paleo approach to what works for me. I also don't eat eggs. Eggs are normally incorporated in paleo, but since I'm allergic, I can't have them. And then more dietary changes that came with time and wisdom were that I have different phases of diet. So by that doesn't mean that I do this one diet fad and then the other diet fad. It means that I do a cycle of a certain balance for 2 or 3 months, and then I do a different cycle. So, for example, the paleo approach, say my body requires 3,000 calories a day based on the amount of activity I do and based on the sports I do. And then I eat 3,000 calories a day, and it stays the same, you know. And I was happy with that for a while. My body was growing, my muscles were growing, I was doing great at the sports that I do. But I also know that my family has a genetic history of cancer. And I had heard a lot about intermittent fasting. Now, I am not a proponent of the intermittent fasting diet as a permanent change. I am a proponent of infrequent intermittent fasting, because some research has shown that intermittent fasting is effective against 2 very significant problems. It can be effective in slowing the growth of aggressive cancers, like really aggressive cancers, stuff that there pretty much isn't medicine for. There are some studies that in mice, intermittent fasting can create significant change. And there's also research being done that intermittent fasting can increase your brain functionality through what is called pruning. When your body's in a caloric deficit or when you're fasting, it signals to your body to start to clean up anything extra that's hanging out in there that could be bad potentially. That would it includes fat, and that's why people lose weight when they fast, but it also includes brain cells that aren't working the way they're supposed to, tumors, or cysts that are hanging out in the body. So the intermittent fasting is something that I include periodically to prune any unnecessary or unhelpful inclusions in my body that I don't want in there. So I will do a super cycle of these 2 diets I talked to you about, the paleo and then the cancer fighting. So in the paleo, I already explained lean proteins and vegetables. In the cancer fighting, I'm going to try to eat as many organic berries as possible. Berries are a food that absorb a lot of pesticide, so whenever you can eat your berries organic, do it. I understand it's very expensive. Again, the cancer fighting diet is not most of my diet. If my whole diet is here, my cancer fighting diet occupies about this much of a fraction of my entire diet. So the organic expensive berries are weighed out by the rest of the program. So organic berries, and also another thing that offsets the cost is you can't eat as much calories. So if my body takes 3,000 calories here, I'm probably only hovering at 1,500 to 2,000 in the cancer fighting pruning diet. I will do for the first half of I'll eat before bed. Not too close to before bed, but I'll eat before bed. I'll get up the next day and probably not eat again until 2 p.m. To get the pruning moving. And then at that point I'll probably eat some organic berries and try to include a lot of antioxidant-rich vegetables for the meal and at night in the cancer-fighting pruning stage. So I probably And not every day of the cancer fighting pruning diet has to be intermittent fasting. Maybe it's 3 days out of the week, something like that. And the cancer fighting pruning diet, I do for maybe a week and a half, and then I go back to my paleo. So I do paleo, cancer fighting pruning, paleo, cancer fighting pruning, and alternate back and forth between those. Keep in mind that in the paleo component, that's when the strength building happens. In the cancer fighting, that's when weight loss happens. But body composition improves in the paleo component and degrades in the cancer fighting component, because in the cancer fighting component you are losing weight, but you're not changing your body composition. So if you have any questions as to why I'm doing what I'm doing, you can drop them in the comment section. Just keep in mind that this is what works for my health. It doesn't have to be what works for your health. I hope it informs your journey, and that this conversation, that my diet is physical beauty is something that I consider, but it is the optimum diet for my health. And there was last year I had a hospital visit. I was doing this dietary cycle, the paleo. I hadn't included the cancer fighting component, but I had implemented the paleo, and I was eating a lot of superfoods. They did a blood draw. The results of the blood draw were so good that it made the hospital nutritionist show up and ask me a bunch of questions. My HDL cholesterol was higher than my LDL cholesterol. Higher than the LDL cholesterol. Like, that is insane. If you Google this, it's extremely rare. This diet, it works for me, but that does not mean it was an easy journey getting there. The beginning of the journey, I told you I was 16. I'm 31 now. That's been a 15-year long journey getting to where I am, getting to that amazing blood work. So when you listen to this, and when you think about how am I going to make this relate to me, and what parts of this are most relevant to me, keep in mind, change happens in diet one step at a time. And that the changes that are easy are the changes that will most likely stick. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Namaste.